Awesome. Sorry. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is the June 18th meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission's Planning Committee. We are meeting in the Government Center, room 280, and this is also being live streamed on the Charlotte Planning Department's YouTube page if you are unable to join us here in person. Let's jump into this. I know we have some exciting presenters here this evening. We'd like to get to them as quickly as we can. Let's start with introductions, beginning with our commissioner, starting to my left with Commissioner Stewart.
Robin Stewart, Planning Committee.
Erin Shaw, Planning Committee.
R.J. Harvey, Planning Committee.
Melissa Gaston, Planning Commission.
And if we could have staff seated around the dais as well, please.
Alicia Osborne, Planning.
Zania Duhaney, Planning.
Jason Pauling, Planning Department.
Kathy Cornett, Planning Staff.
Erin Henson, Planning Staff.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. First order of business. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting on May 21st. And again, thank you to everyone for your contributions. That was a fantastic meeting and I'm glad that we were able to do that. Unless there is any discussion, could I please have a motion to approve those minutes?
Gaston, motion to approve the minutes from the May 21st, 2024 meeting.
Shaw, second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Gaston, second by Commissioner Shaw. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have two mandatory referrals this evening, and I believe the appropriate staff here to address those. I've had a chance to kind of walk through the CRVA one. If there are any questions just as to some nuance there, feel free to ask. I know Cameron Furr with CRVA is with us. If not, if no one has any questions on either of the two, we can go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Gaston, the Planning Committee reviewed mandatory referral reports 24-21 and 24-22 on June 18th, 2024, and have no additional comments for the submitting agency.
All right, motion by Gaston, second by Harvey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you very much. What did I tell you guys? 5:10. All right. So I'm very, very pleased this evening. We have Carolyn Keith and Mike Mazzola with UNC Charlotte. I've had the pleasure of getting to know them both better over the previous few months. They're going to give us an overview this evening of the innovation engines and Clean Carolinas. And I'm not going to steal any more of their thunder. I know we have a presentation after which we will have a Q&A. And again, thank you both for coming this evening, and I'll let you take it from here. And yeah, if you want to stand at the podium up there, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chairperson Blumenthal and commissioners. It's a tremendous pleasure today to address you at the invitation of Chairperson Blumenthal to tell you a little bit about innovation engines and in particular the future of clean energy innovation, which is already established in our metropolitan area as a national leader for clean energy with the headquarters of Duke Energy just up the street. But many other companies such as Siemens Energy has one of the largest advanced manufacturing plants under a single roof in the country, right here in South Charlotte, making products that are essential to the continued reliability, affordability, and eventually decarbonization of energy. We had Carolyn and I had the benefit of two conversations with Andrew about the question of innovation and the connection to what's called place-based research and place-based commercialization. People in place. I'd love for you to, if you don't take anything more from this presentation, think about people and place. And a place where people come together to work together to develop the world's next grouping of technology companies and the production of high-paying jobs that need people that are educated and ready to work and enjoy the prosperity that comes from participating in these types of industries. We find, and the National Science Foundation, which is the sponsor of this program, finds that places still matter. Even in this world of supposed virtual work and decentralization, places and people still matter the most. And in particular, innovation districts have come to the forefront to help explain why the US economy continues to outdistance all other economies in the world, despite, in the case of a handful of those companies, they have national strategies to overtake the United States economically. And they have not even come close. And why? It turns out that detailed study by economists and business researchers and corporate leaders and educators, as well as elected officials and members of the community, such as yourselves, have all come to the conclusion that this idea of an innovation district is key. So Andrew, Carolyn, and I asked ourselves, why? What is it about innovation districts that can lead to greater prosperity, especially for those that are underrepresented in our economy and in our communities in terms of that prosperity? And so Andrew actually posed 4 questions, and my goal today is to go through all 4 of those questions and try to suggest to you what the current research has to say about that and why innovation districts is rapidly becoming a vibrant part of our community. In fact, Carolyn and I were just in Midtown for lunch today in the vicinity of the Pearl, which is Charlotte's innovation district under construction. My outline, therefore, is to tell you a little bit about why the National Science Foundation has been appropriated more than $1 billion to maintain the health of the innovation and technology aspects of the US economy, to maintain that world leadership. And they call that program the Innovation Engines Program. And then they have made it quite clear to those of us that are participating in that program that innovation districts are the heart of what their thinking is and where they want their investment to go. So these are the 4 questions that Andrew posed to us: land use, impact on land use, geographic location of innovation districts. What are the pros and cons? Impact on social mobility, jobs, education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, and educating the local workforce to impact beyond Charlotte. So first, what is this Engines program? I have been working in academia for more than 30 years. I've been at your research university in Charlotte, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, for almost 7 years, leading one of the most successful research centers at the university called the Energy Production and Infrastructure Center, or EPIC, focused on energy. Why in Charlotte? Because as I've already suggested, industry knows that Charlotte and the health of the Charlotte workforce to maintain our economic success in energy. We know about banking, but I can assure you that after banking, energy is a major part of our professional employment here in Charlotte. And so EPIC was a public-private partnership that opened its doors in 2012. And I have been leading EPIC for those 7 years. And as a result of that, I was privileged to participate in a region-wide proposal to this program, which the NSF competed for the first time back in September of 2022. And in May of 2023, we were blessed to be one of 44 inaugural winners of this program for what's called a Type 1 Developmental Award. Charlotte, but it's a 2-state region of service, North Carolina, South Carolina. So we're a 2-state innovation ecosystem, but Charlotte is the glue that holds the innovation economies of North and South Carolina together. So that's why it had to be here in Charlotte. In January of 2024, the NSF announced the 10 winners of their flagship award under this program called the Innovation Engines Type 2 Awards. Type 2 awards are worth up to $160 million each over 10 years. And right now, our innovation engine in Charlotte called Clean Carolinas is pursuing an award of this magnitude in the next solicitation. And we're here to engage with our community, explain what our objectives are in this program, and to enlist your support. I'd like to say we have a small leadership team, and I'm the project director, and Carolyn Keith is the Chief Engagement Officer and Director of Communications for Clean Carolinas. This presentation, by the way, answering the 4 questions, I'd like to point out, was immeasurably assisted with the help of Dr. Richard Cox, who is the director of the Pearl STEM Learning Laboratory, for the insights on the 4 questions I wanted to answer. All right, our vision in Clean Carolinas is to be a 2-state clean energy innovation ecosystem in which the next economic development opportunity in this sequence of nation-leading clean energy developments that have occurred in the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. Let me begin by saying Duke Energy, which keeps the lights on right now, began its service by building hydroelectric dams to begin the historic electrification of North Carolina. That is considered to be, to this day, one of the cleanest energy resources we have, and it certainly is driven by the sun and the weather, and it's carbon free. After that came a nation-leading fleet of nuclear power plants, and of course, Charlotte area is home to 2 highly productive, nationally recognized nuclear energy plants. Over 50% of the electrical energy supplied to North Carolina every year comes from that fleet of Duke Energy nuclear power plants. Half. And that's zero carbon energy. So our second clean resource. Third, when I started at EPIC in 2017, North Carolina was number 2 in the country for solar energy. We're still in the top 5 after Texas and Florida finally woke up to the opportunity to build low-cost, affordable, zero-carbon energy from solar. So we're still top 5. We were top 2. So that was the third. What's our next opportunity? Offshore wind. Right now, it's maybe a little known fact, we're far enough away from the coast where we may not think about this, but I just vacationed, as I have done for the last 24 years, every year, in the Outer Banks, Hatteras Village, beautiful spot. And the wind blows there. It was actually beautiful weather, and the wind wasn't blowing as much as it usually does, i.e., instead of a gale, it was just a nice breeze. Off the shores of North Carolina, we have the largest single potential for offshore wind energy on the Atlantic seaboard. The next in line is Massachusetts. And if you combine North Carolina and South Carolina, we have by far the greatest economically viable offshore wind potential. And right now, the world wants to build far more offshore wind than there is an industrial capacity to make it. And that's our opportunity to take our world-class advanced manufacturing, for which Charlotte has more than anywhere else in either North or South Carolina. The counties that make up the metropolitan statistical area of Charlotte, including in South Carolina, York County, Chesterfield, those combined represent a globally successful advanced manufacturing base that needs and can pivot to begin to make and be part of the supply chain, which by some conservative estimates must double globally just to meet the announced demand for offshore wind by 2030. So we've recognized that we can build an innovation ecosystem around advanced energy, clean energy, with the next economic development potential being offshore wind, by viewing our opportunity as two different regions. The first region, which you can see your eye, clearly has Charlotte at the northern epicenter. I call it the cork in the bottle. And the bottle is the corridor of advanced manufacturers that line I-77 and I-26 all the way down to Charleston. And in Charleston is the base of our innovation industrial corridor that we've defined. In Charleston is one of the world leading research centers for wind turbine development. Literally the second largest wind turbine test facility is in North Charleston, and that is owned and operated by Clemson University, who is a senior partner with UNC Charlotte on this initiative. Up here in Charlotte, we have EPIC, and where we are nationally and internationally recognized for our work in the electric grid and making the electric grid resilient and reliable. So between these two places is a whole group of advanced manufacturers, some of which we're just learning about now. A company that Carolyn and I will be at their invitation touring tomorrow in Sumter, South Carolina, goes by the name of EVAC. They are a US subsidiary for an established German company in which they are building $100 million manufacturing plant for one of the rarest of components that every offshore wind turbine needs, which is called a rare earth permanent magnet. But they're also needed in electric cars and many other advanced clean energy devices. Sumter won out over 119, according to Carolyn's figure she gave me. 199 other localities in the country wanted that $100 million investment, but Sumter, South Carolina got it. And it's right dead in the middle of that industrial corridor region of service. In addition, we have eastern counties, which we define as our second region of service. And these counties are right in line to have many new high-paying jobs in the area of construction and operation and maintenance for that fleet of wind turbines. You can see there are 4 active offshore wind leaseholds off our coast right now, the largest number in the middle Atlantic. All right, our regional challenges. We know that North Carolina now by law must be carbon neutral with all of our investor-owned utilities, i.e. Duke Energy and Dominion Energy, by 2050. Transportation electrification is a dual-edged sword. We hear about the economic development projects, $3 billion being invested by Toyota in Greensboro, for example. But that fleet of globally competitive advanced manufacturers, many of them are actively involved in the automotive manufacturing business. And they're making parts for conventional cars that are powered by internal combustion engines. Here's a number that will tell you what the risk is of complete transportation electrification conversion. It takes roughly 1,000 parts to make a conventional internal combustion engine powered car. It takes roughly 100 parts to make that equivalent electric car. I own 2 electric cars, and I can tell you that the potential of losing many, many jobs in our Charlotte area and all up and down that corridor is real. So real that the South Carolina Department of Commerce has brought to us that this is the reason why they want South Carolina to be fully engaged in Clean Carolinas. Finally, I'd like to just mention about social mobility in the Carolinas. Clean Carolinas is committed to promote prosperity for those that have not participated in the prosperity that comes from advanced manufacturing and technology-based professional employment. I think we all recall a certain professor from Harvard by the name of Raj Chetty, who lit off a storm of self-reflection here in Charlotte when in roughly 2000, I think it was 2015, he published a survey that said Charlotte was last among 50 metropolitan areas in upward social mobility. And so this is the reason why innovation districts are directly relevant to the planning of our future, and not just for land use, but for achieving a better future for folks that have not benefited from the prosperity that Charlotte has generally enjoyed. All right, so we have a strategic plan, development of the Carolinas offshore wind supply chain. And I've already mentioned that regional economic security by pivoting our world-class advanced manufacturers to the opportunity for offshore wind supply chain is at the core of that strategy. So now I'd like to move to just mention something about innovation districts that we have learned through mandatory training that came with our award from the NSF. They said, you know what? You blockheads don't know enough about this. And I will be the first to admit, by profession, I'm an electrical engineer. I've taught electrical engineering for decades. I've done all sorts of research, some of it blue sky, some of it very applied. But what do I know about this? Not very much. A lot of us didn't know very much about it. So they said, you're going to go back to school. So we, Carolyn and I, and our project co-director, Dr. Safir Khan, spent 3 hours every 2 weeks and crammed adult continuing education on innovation districts. And who was providing that education? MIT. And they're very proud of what they believe they've lived the success of innovation districts. So there's two images here. One on the left is Cambridge, Massachusetts, circa 1990. And if you look at that, you see a lot of gravel parking lots, automobiles that don't seem to suggest the prosperity that a large metropolitan area like Boston would suggest, especially since MIT is located in Cambridge, as well as some other fine institutions. So what's going on there? When I look at that, I think there could probably be some overhead images of certain places in Uptown that would kind of look like that. They're very proud to tell us that within 30 years, that entire space, 40-acre space, had been completely recreated by the Cambridge Innovation District. And so innovation districts exist in urban settings to foster collaboration between businesses, researchers, and educational institutions to create a vibrant and innovative urban community in those places. That was the vision that we were shown. And is it just places to live or places to go to eat? Sure, that's some of it. I've been there recently. But what we're really talking about that an innovation district does is promote clustering. So here is, if you were to overlay that image of just buildings and look at where there's a presence from recognizable technology companies all of us have used, some of which I could tell you use, and you may not even know you use it. But look at all of these different companies. So this idea of clustering and promoting clustering is at the heart of the people in place that we hope to achieve. So cluster environment, growing jobs, growth in startup activity, and resilience to economic shocks. One quick anecdote. As part of participating in the NSF program, I had the privilege of going to Osceola County. Now, some of you probably have been to Osceola County. You may not remember Osceola County. You may remember Buena Vista or Disney World. Osceola County is basically next to Disney World, and many of the hotels and restaurants that people who are not staying on the park, they're in Osceola County. And they told us about when the rest of the country has a little cold, like in a recession, they have a near-death experience. So bad that 60 Minutes has come to Osceola County to tell the rest of the country about children living in vacant hotels because there was no visitors coming to Osceola County. So they made it a point to successfully apply to the Innovation Engines program because at one time they had one of the country's most vibrant semiconductor manufacturing innovation ecosystems, all spawned by the Apollo space program. So that's why they called it the Space Corridor. But then after the turn of the century, it all went offshore and they were left with the mouse and agriculture. And they said, we were determined to become resilient to economic shocks again by building their innovation district. They were successful in winning, being one of those 10 inaugural winners. So let's talk about innovation districts in Charlotte. We're embracing it. We've got 3 different innovation district ideas under construction or in initial stages of planning. Of course, the Pearl is the one that's got the biggest buildings under construction. But I congratulate Charlotte for recognizing that underrepresented, underserved parts of our city have the potential to become innovation corridors. And to me, the city's investment in innovation corridors is probably the best evidence that we as a community believe innovation districts can be a part of our solution to improving upward social mobility and bringing prosperity to all. We at UNC Charlotte are also engaged in a third innovation district concept called the North Tryon Tech Hub, which would take those gravel parking lots that I just talked about that surround the Dubois University Center in Uptown and potentially have the potential to eventually create that same sort of Cambridge innovation district environment. So I got 4 slides here that are intended to address the questions that Andrew posed. Land use. We will leave the presentation with you and invite the commissioners to review some of this, read this in detail. But density and mixed use development is what innovation districts are about. And I'd like to point out that and most of this was brought to our attention by Richard Cox, who is a former 3rd grade teacher and has dedicated his professional life to improving STEM outcomes beginning back at middle school or even in elementary school. He recognized that's where we have to start. And so much of what you see here are things that he taught us about. But I was very struck when one of his points about density and mixed use development is that it fosters connectivity across various stakeholders, residents, students, business, investors, and academic institutions. Now, here's the key takeaway from that. When Raj Chetty came back to Charlotte last year, Carolyn, myself, and Saphir were at the front row because we were eager to learn how Charlotte could have a different outcome in his next survey, which he said cryptically, Charlotte will be pleased with the progress that Charlotte has made in my next survey. But since his publication on that was in review, he wouldn't tell us where we were at. But that's the good news. We should do better by Dr. Chetty in the next round. But when he was pressed by students and faculty alike, Dr. Chetty, why was Charlotte number 50 compared to those other communities? And what can we do better to improve our success at being a city, a metropolitan area where prosperity is expected? And his answer was connectivity. You got to connect across organizations. He cited communities, religious institutions, businesses, the service on planning committees as being examples of that. And so to me, this was the connection between an innovation district land use, this connectivity issue, and what Chetty said is the prescription for improving our performance and upward social mobility. All right, innovation districts, pros and cons. We know it's a central location. It's a place where people want to come. They're coming from all over the country. North Carolina, they're not just coming to North Carolina, they're coming to Charlotte. They're coming to our metropolitan area. And I was just fighting my way down Tryon Boulevard to get back to campus today after lunch. And I was struck by there's just that much more construction going on. People want to be in this central location. Ease of access to our growing public transportation, synergy with existing businesses. This is the key issue with clustering. Of course, we know about higher costs of land development and the potential for congestion and the risk of gentrification. And these are things that I would submit is the commissioners' both responsibility, but also your knowledge that will help with the mitigation that is reflected in the concern. Innovation districts, social mobility. Again, it's demonstrated again and again that we create and attract higher paying jobs when we are promoting the aggregation of generally technology-based companies. And I'd like to end by simply saying, beyond Charlotte, to have a regional impact, which we aspire to in Clean Carolinas through the Innovation Engines program, is to bring workforce development and economic development and fuel it with innovation throughout our region of service. This talent attraction is so key. What we are seeing in young people, again, I'm an old people. I've been doing higher education for more than 30 years. And what I am seeing, especially in groups such as women who we aspire to recruit into engineering and have not been as successful as we would like to be, they are looking for more than just a job and a paycheck, a career of consequence, something socially meaningful to them is something that these innovation districts can help promote. And I'll finish by simply saying that we're trying to learn what our young people are looking for. And Carolyn and I produced in March of 2023, the Shaping Your Career in Clean Energy Conference. We had over 300 people attend that conference. And it just reinforced that Charlotte and energy and innovation go together. So thank you for your time.
Thank you guys. No, thank you both very much for coming. Again, as you referenced, we talked about this several times prior to this meeting, and I thought it could be very educational for those of us around the dais. I'd like to go ahead and open it up for any questions from my fellow commissioners. Anything at all? Commissioner Shaw.
You referenced the Pearl District several times. I think it's remarkable what's being done over there. What is the involvement or role of Clean Carolinas in that project? And I'm sorry if you said that and I missed it.
I did not say that. And that is a great question, Commissioner. Thank you for asking it. We're evolving our relationship. Carolyn and I, if we had our say, it would potentially even be the headquarters of Clean Carolinas. But what I can say is that we know that the Pearl is associated with Atrium, a health, a nation-leading health service provider. And so at first you might say, well, there isn't that much intersection between an innovation district that's clearly intended to attract companies, for example, Siemens Healthineers, which is a medical devices company. And even their STEM education program led by this incredible guy, Dr. Richard Cox, that Carolyn and I had lunch with this afternoon. And yet when we talked to them and we're not particularly optimistic about that, they said, oh, think again. the healthcare business is deeply conscious of our need to address sustainability, and energy heads the list. And so they have been recruiting us and persuading us that we and the Pearl have business together.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. One of the things that you mentioned was funds for the quarter for technology or innovation in the quarters of opportunity. Has anything been initiated within those quarters of opportunity, or has it just been earmarked to say we're gonna do some innovation within those quarters?
Well, the Innovation Corridors program, and I might say you'll notice a common thread in each one of these. They're all articles in the Charlotte Business Journal, CBJ, which Carolyn and I read faithfully. I tell you, it's fantastic media for our area. We learn so much about what's going on that we would otherwise not have time in our day to learn. And they have covered these various innovation district ideas in multiple articles. They in particular have had several articles on the corridors of opportunity. And what I've learned from those articles is that the city is investing tens of millions of dollars into developing 6 separate innovation corridors in places that are not necessarily uptown or midtown. So for example, Sugar Creek Road to I-85 is an area where they've identified it's right the gateway to NODA, which we know is a vibrant community, but in terms of attracting businesses and high-paying jobs, there's work that needs to be done there. So that's one of the innovation corridors. Another one is Central Avenue up to Albemarle Road. Again, a place where parts of it have a vibrant nightlife and restaurants, but not necessarily the kind of businesses that have high-paying jobs. And in that particular community, I know that they are focusing on Latin community organizations, the Latin Chamber of Commerce, for example, to help develop ideas that are investable for those areas. So to answer your question, we're not directly involved in corridors of opportunity. We'd like for Clean Carolinas to be relevant to those corridors as they develop. But I think the city has been putting their money where their mouth is on that, and we'll see what happens.
Can you tell me the date on that CBJ article?
Yes, this one here is actually one of the older ones. I kind of went back on both of these to pick one of the earliest mentions. This is September 9th, 2020. But you'll find articles on the corridors of opportunity even as recent as like the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay,
And they have a nice search when just type in corridors of opportunity, you'll see plenty.
Anybody else? Just a few quick things. One, thank you again. I know we had talked about this while each of us kind of represent multiple different stakeholders and our private lives outside of this room. And while obviously the innovation districts have such a broad array of different kind of connections, in this room, we focus on land use. So I really appreciate you being able to tie it back to that because again, that's what we are here for at the end of the day. On that note, just a few questions. First, related to kind of that tier 1 and tier 2 funding structure that you mentioned towards the beginning. Obviously, or not, I guess not obviously, right? The Pearl being kind of the leading innovation district, both in the terms of deliverability and the timing, and it also just the number of companies and the amount of engagements that's there. I'm assuming for that initial round of funding, that is the innovation district that you're featuring, correct?
Yes. Short answer is yes. And the reason for that, even though, as I mentioned before, there could be a little confusion that we have to be careful about when we're writing such proposals, since it's so clearly identified with the life sciences. But what we have identified just today is that the one of the activities that is going to be housed on the 7th floor of their research buildings. They have 2 buildings, an education building, which is where the Wake Forest Medical School will be located, and then their research building where they predict most of the economic development benefits will come from the Innovation District is in that building. So Carolyn, you can ask her afterwards, she toured that facility under construction last week, and she's still telling me about how exciting it was. In particular, on the 7th floor of that building is a space that has 3 main uses already earmarked. One is in what we call an incubator for startup companies. A second is a general space to attract research universities to have co-located research activities and faculty and students there. And then the third is this STEM lab that I mentioned before. And that is among the most aggressive ideas that I have heard in this business. And that's Dr. Cox, and he has it funded right now by a $5 million grant from the Truist Foundation. And what we see and what we kind of discussed and agreed to just today is that Clean Carolinas would plug into that and bring our resources, which would be beginning in the first 2 years, $15 million, and escalating from there to eventually a total of $160 million to really broaden that activity. Now, that activity is focused on right now middle school. And what's important about that is there's no confusion about what we need to do to teach at that level, but also inspire at that level. And life sciences is one thing, but energy sciences is another thing, and math and other foundational topics are taught at those levels, which then allow those students to be successful in whatever career path they would go. And so we would use that connection with the Pearl to help promote students, especially underrepresented students, to have all the options available to them for a potentially professional career, whether it's to be inspired to be a doctor of medicine or be inspired to be a doctor of engineering.
No, I appreciate that. I think that that you touching on the STEM also addresses something else I wanted to bring up. You mentioned in your presentation talent attraction. And I think that when you look at the businesses and the headquarters that are coming to Charlotte and how quickly we're growing, talent attraction is something we already have. I think I would love to hear over time how you guys are able to work on fostering kind of the creation of homegrown talent.
Yes.
Right. How can we focus on, and you said middle school, but you know, even elementary school, high school, and provide opportunities for kids that are already here in Charlotte to get that sort of education. And then obviously, I mean, you guys clearly check the higher education box, right? I mean, with UNC Charlotte, with Wake Forest, with the Pearl, right? I think that those opportunities are already there. But there are, I think, unlimited opportunities here as far as our local kids to get them more engaged as well.
It's a very good point, Andrew. So as we talk about talent, and let me see where I had, I guess, talent attraction. But doing it local is absolutely how you fuel a people in place economic development outcome. And we do have the benefit in Charlotte of being one of the country's leading attractors of new people that want to come here. And getting back to that Osceola County anecdote, they bragged that Orlando metropolitan statistical area was attracting 1,000 people a week. Well, I came back home and calculated Charlotte is attracting 900 per week. So we could have a story in which we're just going to attract people from other places, but that won't serve our mission of making sure that there is prosperity for people who have watched other people do well, but not themselves. And so, you know, with the corridors of opportunity concept, I take from that the city leadership also understands that that's the road to improving prosperity for everyone. And so we have to be focused on making sure that those that need to have that opportunity get it. And that's where Cox is so passionate himself. I mean, his vision is K through 12, but leaving the 9 through 12 off until it's clearly fundable and the resources are there. So we have to start early and we have to do it in schools that don't already have substantial resources already embedded in those schools. So he's identified 6 different elementary middle schools in 3 different counties. Charlotte-Mecklenburg has 4, and he mentioned Byers multiple times. York County has 1, and Cabarrus County has 1. And so with the resources that he currently has, he is going to have a program in which students from those schools come to the Pearl for day programs that is part of their required state education. So his plan is for them to literally have place-based education, and the pilot are these 6 schools in our metropolitan area.
And that's excellent. And hopefully that's something that's scalable over time. Last question, and then we'll give you guys the rest of your evening back. I know that this innovation district and some of the other ones that you referenced, but this one is specifically tailored around clean energy and even more specific beyond that, wind power, right? You mentioned the manufacturing that goes behind it, some of the thought leaders, the research that would be more the Pearl, right? I don't think they're going to build a big warehouse there. I don't think we would let them build a big warehouse there. Do each of these innovation districts have to be, for lack of a better word, themed, industry specific? Or can they be a little bit broader and just more general incubators?
That is a very insightful question, and one that definitely has some land use implications for sure. Let me tell you that I would say the answer is yes, but. And the yes is definitely the theme. Whenever the NSF wants to try to help people understand what they are talking about, and believe me, there are a lot of folks that are questioning, what is the National Science Foundation, which is just funding academics, which I call the modern secular clerics. If you see the way they act, that's the way they act sometimes. They get into their own dogmas of their specialties, and they want to fund their own science. And the National Science Foundation is a place where they can do that because the people that staff the National Science Foundation typically work at the universities. And so they have a way of creating a culture and what they fund that has been blown apart by this Innovation Engines program. In fact, the guy that is leading that program, they created a brand new directorate called the Technology Innovation and Partnerships Directorate. He likes to tell all of his detractors, my directorate was created by act of Congress, the first one in 35 years. Because the mission is so important to the national economy that we do these innovation things. So when people say, well, what do you mean, Dr. Gianchandani, what is an innovation engine? He says, you ever heard of a place called Silicon Valley? And that's the place that the country and the world looks to and says, I want more of those. And that's what this program is about. More of those, but not in Silicon Valley, but more of those in Charlotte and in Winston-Salem and in Morganton, North Carolina. Believe it or not, Morganton, North Carolina and Winston-Salem were the location of 2 of those 10 awards, 2 in North Carolina. And she went up to Morganton, North Carolina to find out what are they doing there that would be an innovation engine. And she came back and said, that's the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And guess what, Mike? They're going to win. And they did. Because it's community-based and it's themed, in the case of Morganton, around textiles and reinventing the textile industry that we know that part of North Carolina was decimated economically by offshoring. And their idea is we can bring it back, just like in Osceola County, we can bring back the semiconductors. So they are themes. Silicon Valley's name tells you what its theme was. But here's the but, Andrew. To be an innovation engine that is durable and sustainable for the period of time the NSF expects us to build Clean Carolinas and the innovation engine here, you have to think in terms of decades, not 10 years. And Silicon Valley is a 50, 60-year innovation engine. I know, I grew up there. But they don't do any silicon there anymore. They got the nickname Silicon Valley to give you a hint of what their theme was, but it isn't now. And what innovation engines do is when they have that much collection of creative, innovative companies and people, they reinvent themselves. So that's the but. To sustain, we'll start by attracting clusters of companies in energy, like we've already attracted clusters of companies in financial technology. So my simple answer to you is we're already an innovation engine themed in financial technology, but we are beginning to reinvent ourselves to become an innovation engine that's inclusive of energy.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for coming. Your passion is clearly evident and very admirable. And please don't hesitate to utilize us as a resource if we can ever be there.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And my Chief Engagement Officer, Carolyn Keith here, will probably be in touch with you about potentially seeking a little bit more formal affirmation of the Planning Committee support of our Clean Carolinas application, which our preliminary proposal is August 6th.
Awesome. Thank you both very much.
Bye-bye.
All right, next, Maria, I believe we have an update on the planning academies.
Hello, thank you all. My name is Maria Florin, and I work on the long range planning team as a project manager for the 2040 Planning Academy program. So I'm here to give you a little update of what we've been up to the past couple months. So just for a little bit of background, if any of you have not heard about this or know much about it, but the program is intended it's an educational program for local residents to help show how cities are built and then what role planning plays in building cities, and to just educate the community and help them become more involved. So the main program goals are to educate the community so that they have an understanding of how our planning programs work, to empower them to participate in planning processes, and also to build relationships between staff and the participants. So a little bit of program history. The program started in 2016, and so since then we've had 161 program graduates, including the ones from this spring, and we've completed 7 annual programs. And then in 2023, 7 annual in-person programs. In 2023, we did 1 virtual program as a way to kind of, open it up to more people, since each class has a max of 30 students in each one. So this online program helped it open it up to about 49 to 50 average attendees per session, with a total of 119 YouTube playlist views to date. And I'll also say that we have a few Planning Academy graduates. I know Commissioner Gaston and Commissioner Welton, and I don't know if there's any others, but if there were.
I think Carolyn was one as well, right?
Carolyn, who's joining soon. She completed the 2022 program. So so the 2016 to 2022 programs, the program format was 5 to 6 classes over several weeks. We opened the application to the community, and then we selected about 30 students to participate in that. And so each of those classes is broken up into a few different topics. So history of planning, comp plan and UDO, transportation and mobility, and then closing with urban design and preservation. Each class includes presentations from the different topic experts, workbook readings that we send in advance, and some fun activities and homework. But for this year's events, we wanted to try something a little bit different to just to continue to grow and evolve the program and kind of open it up for more to more people. So we did a youth planning day and then a 1-day boot camp as opposed to the 5 to 6 week program class. So in March, we did a youth planning day with 22 participants. We worked with Generation Nation. If you're not familiar, Generation Nation works with local youth to get them involved in civic action. And so our day included presentations and a quick overview of planning for the youth. We did land use and street section exercises with them, and we did an urban design walking tour. And staff was able to do some icebreakers with them and really connect with them. And we had a lot of fun kind of engaging with them, learning from them and us learning from them and them learning from us. Then on our Planning Academy Bootcamp Day in April, we had 23 participants, and it was kind of like a fast day, 10 to 4 p.m. class. So anyone who wanted to spend the day with us, they applied for the program, and then we ended up selecting 35 students. Sadly, at the end, only 23 arrived on the day, but at least we had a really great group of people with diverse backgrounds and interests. And again, we did a history of planning. We did a bus tour with Dr. Tom Hanchett, presentations on various topics, a kind of a Q&A speaker panel with our different topic speakers, and then a land use and street section activity. So I'm gonna play a video that kind of summarizes each of those, and hopefully the sound works, so we'll see. Oh, it's not working. Oh, it did, sorry, there it goes. And so looking forward with our Planning Academy program, we plan to continue to partner with Generation Nation when there's opportunities to continue our youth engagement and continue to expose like the younger minds to what planning is and how they can build a career out of it, or how they can be involved in planning efforts. And that we want to continue to explore creative ways to implement the program, such as the boot camp or the other 5 to 6 week program, and then again maintain our online program available for all. And so that's it. If there's any questions, we're happy to take them.
Any questions, anyone? Only one for me. Do you have, I believe we had a couple sitting in the planning commission meeting last week, interns for the planning department. Do they come through this program, or is that chosen separately?
So one of the interns we have is through the MIA program, which is a Mayor's Youth Employment Program, which is a city program, and that's for high school students. So we have one intern from that program, but she is specifically interested in planning. We met with her. She starts next week, but we met with her virtually just to kind of get her ready, you know, where to go, all those types of things. And she's very interested in planning. From her parents are very interested in really participate in the community. So that's that student. The other one is from a Davidson College program where they're working directly with the community. So I can't remember the name of the program, but as part of that program, they place students in different work positions and they actually pay the salary for them. So those are those two. But we have in the past, last year, one of our interns helped us with some of the youth strategies that we could use and kind of tweak some of the games we use so that they were a little more modernized. I guess you'd say some of the role play, he changed some of those. So we do try to involve them because and actually maybe 2 or 3 summers ago, we had another intern that did his that one was from UNC Chapel Hill, and he was a master's student in planning, and his terminal project was on how to engage youth. And so he used us as a case study, presented it to our staff. We used some of his recommendations, and then that was his project as well.
Cool. Yeah, just because once the formal program ends, how do you keep people engaged without just a hard cutoff? And give them a master class on text amendments next year. All right, I believe that's it. Any other questions? Anything else for the good of the order? Yeah, thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, take a motion to adjourn.
Second.